Transition. You may be aware or unaware of an approaching transition. Your vision of it may be veiled, but that may be necessary. The future is the great unknown. The future may have formed and unformed elements. The cycling of the seasons, for example, has a lot of temporal momentum behind it and is very likely to continue unless derailed by an enormous shock, such as a giant asteroid impact that creates a version of nuclear winter. The weather on any given day, however, is far less predictable and more subject to butterfly effects, more subject to unpredictable variations. The season when the ground is fertile is formed, but what you choose to plant in the ground may not be. The unformed elements give more space for free will and novelty. It may be fully formed that you are heading toward the great event horizon of death, but what you do in that journey has unformed aspects. A misty landscape you see in vague and shifting outline up ahead. You are subject to outside forces, but you are also the chief agent shaping the approaching landscape with your thoughts, choices, and actions. You create your own reality. Fundamentalists inflate the influence you have into an absurd absolutism. And you can see my philosophy, dynamic paradoxicalism, which sees a dynamic paradox between you create your own reality and the obvious outside reality creates you. Aspects of reality where there are outside forces beyond our control. Determinists go in just the opposite direction, deflating individual influence and denying free will in favor of a mechanical universe inhabited by automatons, like Daniel Dennett, who says we are all zombies, and Sam Harris and other neurological materialists who deny free will. From the perspective of eternity, past, present, and future are unified, and we connect with this perspective by becoming aware of the now-ever in which we always exist. Think of yourself as a spinning lathe, cutting forms or imprints out of the raw material of the future as it comes down the conveyor belt of linear time. For example, as I write this card, the blank space on the screen below what I've written is like the future. Now, obviously, I'm reading the card now, but when I was writing it in real time, that was the case. What was below the blinking cursor, was a blank zone that had infinite unformed potential. The lathe of my mind cuts into that unformed potential by choosing certain words out of the bubbling cauldron of possibility, the infinitude of letter and word combinations. And yet, the text future of the card has some roughly formed elements I also respect. Given the image and the unifying concept I've given the card, I will not include words that stray from the theme. I could choose to go on a tangent on how to cook artichokes, but the relative continuity of my intentions in creating the card is well formed and won't allow that. The unexpected could interfere with what I intend to form out of the raw material of the future coming toward my lathe. For example, my computer could suddenly crash. And this sort of rare event, which depends on variables I have little awareness of, seems impossible for me to forecast. So I keep saving my work, knowing that a crash, like an asteroid impact, is inevitable. If I am overconfident and presume upon the future, then I am less prepared for the crash. The unformed and unknowable aspects of the future are essential to the beauty and mystery of life. Although I seem to be the one forming the content of this card, I cannot anticipate, nor would I want to, the future of this card, who might pick it, or the context of the reading and the meaning it might have to unknown future users of the oracle. You, who are listening to this card, are part of that mysterious future unknown to me. And that is part of what makes an oracle a living, dynamic entity. The unknowable aspects of the future are what make life in general dynamic and interesting. Organisms, including human beings, do have some ability to sense the future, particularly the near future. For example, a well-controlled, triple-blind, and replicated scientific experiment involved human subjects who were shown a series of images, most of them pleasant or neutral, but a few of them shocking, a gruesome car accident, etc. And you could look into Dean Radin, who is, I think, the one who first conducted this experiment, but apparently it's been replicated a number of times. And this experiment really demonstrates short-term clairvoyance in about 35% of the subjects tested. The order of the images was not known by the experimenters, nor even by the computer. Hence the triple blind, subjects, experimenters, nor the computer knew, which selected the images based on randomizing operations performed just a split second before the images were displayed. The subjects were hooked up to biometric sensors like the sort used with lie detectors, galvanic skin response, heart rate, respiration, etc. The experiment showed that many subjects registered physiological stress responses several seconds before an upsetting image, even though they were mostly not conscious of any clairvoyant warning. Research on people who were the victims of violent attacks shows that they usually had warning intuitions. See the work of Gavin de Becker, especially his book, The Gift of Fear, but also his free YouTube masterclass. Though these were usually overridden by their rational minds, some warning intuitions may be clairvoyant, and others may derive from subtle pre-incident indicators, subliminal cues picked up about a person's body language, etc. A careful statistical analysis of plane crashes showed a significantly larger percentage of last-minute cancellations for flights that later crashed. From the perspective of the I Ching, it is crucial not to attempt to pre-structure the future. Pre-structuring the future is when we build an image of the future in our minds and then presume that the future will comply with the image. And research on survival shows that this is what victims have in common, is a tendency to impose sloppy mental maps based on the past onto novel developments in the present, whereas survivors readily adopt and change their mental models based on new circumstances. For example, we build a fantasy in our mind of a romantic future with the person we find attractive. The pre-structured fantasy attempts to control the life cycle of the relationship, which is a third entity, not fully controlled by either party. When we pre-structure the future, we become clumsy, rigid, and diminished in our ability to flow with the spontaneous and unexpected. We get blindsided by new developments in a relationship because we built this fantasy of how it was supposed to unfold. I Ching scholar Carol Anthony uses the game of tennis to illustrate this principle. If we expect the ball to come across the net in a certain way, we may not be prepared for how it actually comes across. But if we wait on our side of the net with an unstructured attitude, we're ready for anything. There is nothing wrong with planning and scheduling if you're aware of these as strategic and tactical exercises done in present time with the full awareness that unexpected events may come up which will force you to change the plan or schedule. As in this quote by Cory Doctorow, the first casualty of any battle is the plan of attack. Once a time of heightened transition or change is upon us, it's crucial to actively work with the cycle of change with full engagement so that we neither neglect opportunities nor allow difficulties to deflect or distract us from our life mission. As Shakespeare says in Julius Caesar, "There is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted, all the voyage of their life is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures. Relating to the future requires a dynamic relationship to a number of paradoxes. The future is both formed and unformed, the future as unknowable, and the future as perceivable by a clairvoyant sense. So as we transition into the unknown, we respect these paradoxes. We see the trees that are just up ahead, but are also aware of the misty landscape which we can't fully perceive, but can only discover by journeying into it.